Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Alien Night of Notre Dame. In 2019, fire broke out at the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, ravaging the 850-year-old structure. But what started as a tragedy yielded unexpected results. When experts began preparing the site for restoration, they came across a pair of ancient sarcophagi. The contents of the ancient coffins were shocking. Archaeologists from the National Institute of Preventive Archaeological Research said one of the coffins contained the body of a knight. Only this wasn't any ordinary knight. He had worn pelvic bones, suggesting he rode his horse a lot. But he also had an elongated head that would have made him look like an alien while alive. This bizarre discovery is changing the way we look at Notre Dame, and indeed the medieval era. The knight who was buried here went by the nickname Le Cavalier, as was detailed on his sarcophagus. But we don't know what his real name was. Researchers say he was likely intentionally deformed as an infant. Whoever raised the child forced him to wear a special headdress which crushed his skull, shaping it unnaturally as he grew. Then, at around 30 years old, the knight died. He didn't die violently in battle, but most likely passed on because of a chronic disease that caused him to lose all of his teeth. He would have been buried under Notre Dame near the end of the 16th century. It's a confounding discovery because nobody knew there were knights with deformed alien-like heads roaming around France during that time. It's opened a door of mystery that scientists are desperate to solve. Are you surprised to hear there was cranial deformation in France in the medieval days? Let me know in the comments. Number 9. Secrets of hieroglyphic writing. One of the greatest discoveries archaeologists ever made was how to read hieroglyphic writing. It was a major revolution in the scientific community, changing our ability to understand ancient history. It all started in 1814 when British scientist Thomas Young started studying the Rosetta Stone. You know, that stone that was discovered by Napoleon in 1799. The Rosetta Stone changed the world. The Rosetta Stone was inscribed with a message from Egyptian priests in 196 BC, with hieroglyphic script written beside Coptic and then Greek. The side-by-side writing allowed François Champollion to decipher the language for the first time between 1822 and 1824. This truly was a discovery that changed history, but there is a lot that people don't understand about hieroglyphic writing. For example, it wasn't just a bunch of pictures with special meanings. This is what initially confused the experts trying to figure out the language. These symbols look like pictures of people, objects, and animals, but that isn't the case. Hieroglyphics is a phonetic language in which every symbol represents a sound. It's just like how A or B represent a certain sound in the English alphabet. But with hieroglyphics, the letters are pictures. Number 8. Water into wine. According to the Gospel of John, Jesus Christ turned water into wine in front of a shocked audience at the wedding at Cana. But no one has ever been able to figure out where that wedding took place. All the Gospel tells us is that Jesus was invited to a wedding with his mother and his 12 disciples. That's a lot of plus ones. Then, when the wine ran out at the ceremony, Jesus showed his true power. He turned the water into wine so that everyone could continue feasting. Thank goodness, since he brought so many guests. Over the years, scholars have placed the site of Cana in half a dozen villages across Galilee, but no one has ever been able to offer reliable proof for their claim. Until now. A group of researchers believe they finally identified the Jewish village where Jesus Christ performed his first miracle. It's called Khirbet Wana, and it's long gone now. The village existed between 323 BC and 324 AD. In its crumbling ruins, experts uncovered clues that they say match the description of Jesus and his miracle. They found a large network of underground tunnels used for worshiping Christ. They also found a veneration cave complex. This was an underground sanctuary where Christian pilgrims came to venerate the miracle of turning water into wine. The complex was used 1,500 years ago, right up until the Crusades in the 12th century. Unfortunately, there still isn't any possible way to confirm whether Jesus Christ truly performed this miracle. It's still a story written in a book. However, Kurbedwana does appear to be the most likely location for the site of Cana. Number 7. The invasion of the Huns. Attila the Hun is remembered today as the terrorizer of the Roman Empire. Most historians agree that Attila and his army of Huns descended on Central Asia and Eastern Europe with fury and violence. It started at the beginning of the 5th century A.D. Attila, known commonly as the Scourge of God, rallied his people and they galloped towards the Roman Empire, burning down everything in their way. This isn't up for debate. We know the Huns ravaged Europe and helped destabilize the Roman Empire. But what scientists have never been able to understand is why Attila embarked upon such a campaign of violence. Scientists now believe they may have found the answer. If they prove to be right, it's going to change how we view Attila and his barbarian army. Researchers from the University of Cambridge studied tree rings in Europe to see what the climate was like 2,000 years ago. Their research showed that drought likely devastated the Huns' homeland. The Huns suddenly ran out of food, causing them to lash out and overrun their neighbors. Suddenly, without rain and with no crops to eat, Attila led his people on a conquest into the territory of the Goth tribes. After fighting through Germany and Austria, the Huns attacked Rome. What this discovery changes is the motivation behind the brutality. We can't look at Attila the Hun as a bloodthirsty warmonger any longer. He was just a leader of men trying to save his starving people by any means necessary. Do you agree with this theory? Let me know in the comments. And now for number 6. But first, I want to give a big shout out to Tyson Gerard and Alex Swan. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join the family. We'd love to have you. Number 6. The early humans of Ethiopia. When human beings, meaning Homo sapiens, began spreading out from Africa, they were adapted to living in the lowlands. We were terrestrial animals that lived at low altitudes, in plains and fields and forests. For an animal living at a low altitude to suddenly climb up into the mountains is a huge transition. Higher altitudes are often drier, oxygen isn't readily available, and the change can shock the system. For this reason, scientists long held the theory that the high plateaus of Tibet and the vast mountains of Ethiopia were not places humans originally settled. But a new discovery has changed history. Researchers uncovered a rock shelter in the Bale Mountains of Ethiopia that was home to a group of humans 47,000 years ago. Back then, the mountains were still covered completely in glaciers and ice. Scientists don't fully understand why primitive Homo sapiens climbed up the icy slopes and made their homes here. Experts sifted through the burned bones found inside the rock shelter. This allowed them to see the diet of the ancient high-altitude humans. They lived in the chilly cavern and survived mainly from eating African mole rats. These are huge rodents like gigantic rats with incisors so big you can use them as tent pegs. Gotz Ossendorf from the University of Cologne says it was the rats that helped make life at altitude possible. They were easy to catch, they gave significant nutritional value, and so humans were able to slowly get used to living in the mountains. Would you eat a giant rat to survive? Why not? Let me know. Number 5. Ancient tattoos. The truth behind tattoos is that people have been inking their bodies for a long time. Tattoos may be controversial today, and certainly more so in previous decades, but this taboo is a new phenomenon. The truth is that tattooing was popular all over the ancient world. Japan, Egypt, New Zealand, Thrace, North America, Scotland, everyone had tattoos. The oldest preserved tattoos ever found were on the cold flesh of Ötzi the Iceman. He died 5,300 years ago in the mountains of Italy, then was uncovered practically frozen in a block of ice in 1991. His body was marked with primitive tattoos. In 2019, researchers found tattoo needles in southeastern Utah from 2,000 years ago. Native Americans used cactus spines and yucca leaves to tattoo their friends. Tattoo historian Steve Gilbert says the word tattoo comes from the Samoan language, from ancient Polynesian explorers who themselves were covered in tattoos. Thanks to discoveries like these, we know humans used tattooing as a sign of expression for at least 5,300 years. Many ancient Egyptian mummies were also found covered in tattoos, showing it was socially accepted then as well. So, what happened to make tattoos controversial in Western cultures? Researchers say it happened in the 1400s. European colonizers were not nearly as interested in tattoos as many of the people they were colonizing. Europeans then used tattoos as a way to draw a line between the sophisticated European people and those they saw as uncivilized. What do you think about tattoos? Do you have any? Let me know in the comments. Number 4. Spanish jewels. In 1656, a ship sank while sailing from Havana to Spain with a preposterous amount of treasure from the Americas. The ship was named Our Lady of Wonders, and it belonged to the King of Spain. It was a Spanish galleon and part of a larger fleet sailing through the Bahamas with a cargo of gold, silver, and priceless gems. The entirety of the treasure was going to be dumped on the lap of King Philip IV. But sadly for the greedy king, the ship never arrived. It ran into another ship in the fleet and sank, killing an estimated 605 people. The treasure sank to the bottom of the ocean. The exact location of the wreck was never really lost. It's been salvaged already by countless expeditions. But a new group led by marine archaeologists with Allen Exploration went in search of the treasure themselves. They found priceless Spanish jewels scattered across the floor of the ocean. They retrieved a 6-foot-long gold chain and even found a gold pendant with the cross of Santiago on it, framed in a dozen green emeralds. There were so many treasures that if they sold them on the black market, the entire crew could retire. The real wonder is that there's any treasure left. Allen Exploration founder Carl Allen says the galleon was already salvaged by Spanish, French, Dutch, and English expeditions in the 17th and 18th centuries. It was also pillaged by greedy treasure hunters in the 1990s. It's a miracle the archaeologists found any treasure at all. Number 3. The Dead Sea Scrolls. In 1946 or 47, nobody's exactly sure on the date, a group of teenagers herding goats near the ancient settlement of Qumran made a discovery that changed history. On the shore of the Dead Sea, one of the shepherds threw a rock into a cave on the side of a cliff. Then came the sharp sound of clay shattering. The youngsters climbed into the cavern and found a huge assortment of clay jars, most of which contained leather or papyrus scrolls. This was the beginning of the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Over the next few years, treasure hunters and archaeologists descended on Israel like a plague. Tens of thousands of scroll fragments were taken from an estimated 10 nearby caves, in total completing over 900 lost religious manuscripts. Many of these manuscripts were written 2,000 years ago. This was shocking because up until the discovery, the oldest manuscripts from the Hebrew Bible came from the 10th century. Yet the Dead Sea Scrolls included 225 biblical books from 1,200 years earlier. It's difficult to put into words how significant this discovery was. Nearly the entirety of the Hebrew Bible was found represented in the Dead Sea Scrolls. They also included a guide to hidden treasure and forbidden biblical texts. For example, the story of Enoch and the Nephilim, who once walked the earth. Number 2. The Tomb of Salome. Researchers have discovered some interesting things at the Tomb of Salome, the alleged burial site of a woman who helped during the birth of Jesus Christ. The tomb was first discovered by grave robbers west of Jerusalem in the 1980s. It was one of the only times illegal looters made a discovery that would change history. Later excavations revealed the Jewish burial chamber dating back to the days of Rome. The burial chamber was then converted into a Christian chapel and continued to draw worshippers even in the early days of the Islamic period. But then the tomb was lost. An inscription found inside the tomb led researchers to believe it was dedicated to Salome. She played the role as midwife at the birth of Jesus Christ according to the Gospel of James. But the only evidence of this being her tomb came in the form of some inscriptions mentioning her name. Researchers say it was the cult of Salome who sanctified the site in her honor, sometime in the 5th century. The most recent discovery is not at all what you might expect. Researchers found the remains of shops near the tomb that were selling clay lamps. These shops targeted pilgrims who were coming from across the world to see the tomb of Jesus' midwife. These shops operated as late as the 9th century, making huge money off visiting tourists. It really makes you wonder if the tomb really belonged to Salome, or if it was just a trick to sell tourists clay lamps. This could have been an ancient tourist trap. Number 1. Ships in the sea. Since 2015, researchers with the Maritime Archaeological Project have been searching for shipwrecks in the Black Sea. They have uncovered no less than 60 wrecks spanning a whopping 2,500 years of naval history. These ships date back to the medieval, Byzantine, Roman, and Greek periods. And according to historians, they are rewriting everything we know about ancient trade and shipbuilding. The team had originally set out to map the floor of the Black Sea off the coast of Bulgaria. They weren't initially looking for ships, but were more interested in things like the fluctuations in sea level. The discovery of ships was more accidental than anything. In just 1 year, they had already found 44 ancient vessels. There are so many lost shipwrecks down here that scientists will need a lifetime to study them all. John Adams from the University of Southampton says the collection of Black Sea shipwrecks must comprise one of the greatest underwater museums in the world. Who wants to go diving? But researchers didn't just find ships. They also uncovered a lost village from the Bronze Age submerged by 13 feet of water. There is an untapped archaeological treasure at the bottom of the Black Sea that scientists haven't even scratched the surface of. Thanks for watching! What would you do with a handful of ancient Spanish jewels? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and come back soon. Bye!